afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone from all the parts of the world. Welcome to Real Life Research Institute Africa Program Webinar session. So today's session is going to be about teaching for views, social media, and the emerging digital risks in the African classroom. This webinar brings together the digital future experts, researchers, educators, parents to examine the rapid growth of the trend of using students for social media content, highlighting the risks and the lessons that can be drawn from both the good and the harmful misuse of social media. So, for our session today, I'll be your co moderator. My name is Rosaline Maramba from Zimbabwe. Our main moderator is Dr. Tembo Timbeni, who is an education researcher at eBase Africa, which is in Cameroon. She's also a committed teacher trainer in advancing learner centered approaches within the balance of educational innovation as well as the protection of children and their safety and their rights. So please welcome Dr. Tebo Timbeni to start off our webinar session today. Dr. Tembo, the floor is yours. Dr. Tebo, are you able to hear me? Yeah. Dr. Tebo, we're waiting for you to start speaking. I hope you're able to hear me. Unmute your mic. In the meantime, sorry for the tech mishap. So Miss Yako Benson is an educator and a creative entrepreneur on the basis of content creator advocacy and innovative learning with experience of 12 years in the education sector. And she is passionate about learners in engaging inclusive and practical effort for children. So Miss Benson, you can start your presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Rosaline. I really appreciate. Thank you, Mrs. Table. Thank you, everyone. I feel this is a very important opportunity, and I do not take it for granted. Thank you so much. Thank you, my fellow speakers. I am excited to be here, and beyond being a speaker here, I also want to learn because I'm a teacher, and I'm also a content creator in the educational system too. So it is a good opportunity to also learn. And straight away, because I know Miss Roslyn is already keeping the time for me, I'm going to be talking on how the search for likes redefines the teacher-student dynamics, how the search for likes redefine the teacher-student dynamic. I have been a teacher for a long time, and then I switched, not just switch, but based on necessity in the classroom and also in the school, I started content creation too, creating content for school, creating content for my own hub too. I run an arts hub for children where children come together to create different kinds of art. So I get to put out content about children creating their arts on social media. So creating content or finding likes is like a new normal noun in the educational system. Um, Now, on how the search for likes to define the teacher-student dynamic. Now, we've moved from the learning-centered classroom to performance-centered classrooms. Now, when the educational system becomes content, who is the audience, the learner, or the algorithm? That's usually one thing that we need to focus on. Who's the learner? Now, social media has transformed the educational system. That is absolutely true. In fact, I don't think Out of 100 schools today around the world, we have over 80 of them that are actively on social media, putting out content every day because people get to be stimulated or interested about what is going on social media. For example, now is we're getting closer to the admission period. In fact, parents are already looking out for schools because some schools are going to be losing students and some are going to be gaining students. So some people are looking for new schools to join. And then you get people, for example, I get some parents reach out to me to say, "Oh, can you recommend this school?" And I'm like, "Yes, this school is okay." The next question is, "Can you share their social media handle?" Why? Because they want to go there to see what the school is doing. It feels like walking down to the school is a little bit tougher now, or it feels like they will not see enough of the school if they walk down to the school and say, "I'm here for inquiries." So parents prefer sitting back and then going through social media pages to see what the school is doing. Now, today, classrooms are no longer confined to the four walls. Teachers share lessons, classroom activity, student achievement, educational resources. There's nothing you can't find now on social media or on the internet. Now, so while this creates visibility and opportunities, it also raises questions. Now, what happens when teaching becomes content? I have a lot of teachers' friends on social media, and sometimes I wonder how they put out five contents in a day, six contents in a day. Like I know I do. I put out content. I put out content from my school where I work. I put out content from my home. I put out my personal content. But again, I don't think I post more than twice in a day. In fact, if I post twice in a day, it means I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that. But I know I do it just once, sometimes once in a blue moon, because I know how demanding it is for you to even finish your work in the classroom, to now even edit videos, to add animations. Most teachers are already moving into animation, using AI to create such amazing things online. So I sit and I wonder, when do they even have this time? Like, how do they create enough time for their work in the class? In fact, after school, you still have a lot of work to do. So how do they manage these? Now, what happens when the camera enters into the classroom? Now, the rise of camera in the classroom years ago, success was measured by student understanding. We all know that already. Learning outcomes, classrooms, engagement. But today, it is about views, it's about shares, it's about comments, it's about likes, it's about virality. Did my content go viral? How many people saw what my children did today? Even as someone who owns an art hub, I usually panic about, I usually get myself worried about those things. If I put out an art content about what my children did, maybe on Saturday, I'm now checking the algorithm. Oh, how many people did it reach? Is it going to bring more children to the hall? I mean, so there's this shift that social media has actually brought to the minds of educators. Now, the danger is not in the camera itself. There's no danger in content creation. The danger is when the camera becomes more important than the child. That is where the problem is, not the content creation. The problem is not the content creation. It is when we now make it more important than the children. I hope you can all hear me. All right, so now performative learning. Now, so it affects children psychologically too. So now when students begin performing instead of learning, the moment the camera appears, their behavior changes. Now, for some that are quite social or sanguine in nature, you get them ask questions like, "Am I being recorded?" Because even as an adult, if a camera comes to you, if someone turns the camera facing you, there's something it does to you. You quickly want to adjust yourself. You want to be in your good look. You get some people say, "Oh, wait, my hair is not in order. Please let me put my hair in order." Oh, I don't think for example, ladies, you see them say things, "Oh, let me put on my lip gloss. Let me dust my face a bit." Why? Because the camera is turning to them. So they want to give their good look. That's the same thing with children. So the moment they know they're being recorded, they start asking questions like, "Am I being recorded?" Because now they want to switch from learning to performance. Will I be featured? Some are curious if that content is going to will involve them. Will my parents see? So that if their parents will see, they know they have to be in their extra good behavior. Will this go online? Some children become overly excited. Some even seek attention. Some perform for the camera. I know children that whenever the camera comes to them, they're already so excited. They put up their acting attitude and you're impressed about it. And then on the other side, there's some that become anxious, withdrawn. They avoid participation. They don't want to get involved. A child once told me that I told a child to come because we were trying to shoot the content for um our school projects, our midterm project. So we wanted to put out what our children have been able to come up from the midterm project. And I wanted them to actually talk about what they did. Some of them did projects on water cycle. So they've made models of water cycle. And I wanted them to talk about it. And the child just said that he's not interested. Like he just said it plain that, oh no, he doesn't want to do it. And I didn't force him. So there's some children like that. Some of them become anxious, some of them become withdrawn, some of them avoid participation. Um, and that simply tells us that learning has actually, education has actually shifted from learning now to performance. Now, the psychologist's safety also matters. Every child deserves a classroom where mistakes are served. Learning requires trial and error, questions, wrong answers, vulnerability. But what happens when students know that their mistakes may be recorded? I'm not sure. I don't want to say that I'm sure that there are teachers who actually do that. But I've come across some educational content, some teachers' content that actually shows the mistakes of children. Their wrong accents, their wrong pronunciations. And the first thing that comes into my mind is, how do these children feel about this? Or if their parents watches this, how do they feel about it? A good example, there was a time my JSS 3 students did something really annoying to me, and I was really pissed. And I expressed it to them. I let them know that I was really pissed. And then they wrote the next day when I came to school, they wrote letters to me. It was so amazing. And for someone who is used to social media content creation, I took pictures of those letters and I posted it on my status. But then I felt bad because their names were written on it. And then a parent of one of those child actually um viewed my status. And again, it came across in my mind, and I was like, what if she feels bad about this? Not about the letter, but realizing that her child did something that pissed the teacher off, and I don't know, but I didn't feel good about it. So I took I took the post down. The moment I took the post down, my proprietress reached out to me and said that I should have covered the names of the children. And I was like, oh, thank the heavens that I already took down that post. So, children's psychological state also matters. They need to be vulnerable. But what happens when students know their mistakes are being recorded? Some of them avoid participation, they fear embarrassment, they focus on appearance, they seek approval rather than understanding. A classroom should be a safe place to learn, not a stage to impress the audience. Again, like I said, content creation is really good. The great aspects of them are there. It helps for visibility and all of that. But then we should not miss the main people in the picture, which are the children, the learners. Now, the invisible child. As content creation grows, some students receive more attention than others. Now, I manage my school social media platform, and I can tell you for sure, I follow other schools too. We follow other school social media pages. And even if a school has 1,000 children, 1,000 learners, there's always that special set. There is always that special set. There is always that one that the camera often gravitates towards. The one that are confident, that are eloquent, that do not have the mother tongue interference when they speak, the ones that have great accents, the ones that are outspoken, the ones that are highly talented, the ones that won't stress you when you're creating the content. I mean, I'm guilty of that. but it is something that happens and it's something that needs to be watched. There is always a drift because when you're creating content, you want to impress. You want
Is
to
it
impress the
done?
people that are out there.
We have
Yes,
reached your time.
I've reached my time.
Yes, you reached your time.
Really?
Yes, you can finish up within a minute for your summary of
It's
information.
just 10 minutes. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Uh, what do I do? All right, let me just glance through the slides. All right, but what happens? Quiet learners. What happens to the quiet learners, those with learning difficulties, children with special needs, children who are shy? So what happens to those children? Let me just quickly go through the slides. Oh, now the multitasking strain on teachers. Now, as teachers, you are expected to teach, manage behavior, maintain engagement, follow curriculum, and then create content to capture content, capture footage, and edit videos. And then that leads to cognitive overload. Now, are we teaching children or creating content? This is perhaps the most uncomfortable question. Sometimes educational content genuinely captures learning. Actually, it captures learning, but other times learning is redesigned to suit content. Examples like repeating activities for better shoot, recreating spontaneous moments, prioritizing aesthetics over learning outcomes, interrupting lessons to capture footage. Now, the erosion of trust. Without clear boundaries, filming can create concerns about privacy, consent, data protection, child safety. Thank God we have a speaker that's going to talk about data protection too. So parents may get to ask who has access to my child's image, and students may wonder, am I here to learn or to be a part of someone's content? Now, finding the balance. Educational content is not the enemy. It can inspire learner, it can showcase innovation, it can promote school, it can support learning beyond the classroom and build educational community. But the goal is actually balance. It should support learning and not become secondary to content. Now, the best practice are what? Teachers should prioritize learning over content. They should obtain informed parental consent. Like my school, they have a consent from parents. Even at my hub, I have consent from parents. Respect children's privacy, avoid excessive filming, do not stage learning experience, include diverse learners to protect vulnerable children, create clear school policies on content creation. All right, so because at the heart of every video, photograph, and social media post is a child, and children deserve more than content, they deserve meaningful learning experiences. We need to put that into consideration because, in summary, or what I could say is that we should not remember that the goal of education is to get children learn, so we should not slide or drift from content creation and miss the main aim, which is learning. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Miss Benson, for your wonderful presentation regarding the sector of educators and the parents. So our next speaker is going to be Mr. Alvin from eBase Africa. So, Mr. Alvin is a dedicated researcher in the growing focus of evidence based monitoring in education, demonstrating strong analytical skills and literature synthesis, as well as data evaluation of critical evidence regarding education. So, help me in welcoming Mr. Alvin. Mr. Alvin, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I want to first of all thank the previous speaker, Mrs. Benson, for that powerful presentation. I have been challenged to present to you all about digital privacy frameworks in African schools. So I took a screenshot of a few countries in Africa. Given the context of this webinar, I couldn't do more than that. So we will begin by looking at an overview of the continent. We have over 50 countries in Africa, and of these 50, about 36 only have data protection laws. This is about just 65% of the countries in Africa. And 1/3 of these laws have just been made or passed within the last 5 years. Now, last 2 years, 2024, it was reported that primary schools had just 40% internet access. The African Union's Malabo Convention that was held in 2014 is the world's only regional treaty that unifies cybersecurity, electronic transactions, and data protection under a single legal document. Though this has just been ratified by only 15 countries as of 2024. Now, the gap is that only 50% of lower secondary schools had internet access in 2024. This constrains both edtech adoption and data governance systems. I said in primary schools were 40% and lower secondary schools were 50% of internet access. Now let us look at some national frameworks that are leading when it comes to school-specific data governance across Africa. We have the most active when it comes to enforcement of data protection. We had the Data Protection Act of 2019. This was signed in Kenya, where they created the Office of Data Protection Commissioner, who issues dedicated guidance for schools. And through the office, schools must register as data controllers, and schools must appoint a data protection officer, who is the DPO, and then conduct impact digital. They call it the digital privacy impact assessment before deploying any edtech or any biometric tool. Then we have the situation of Nigeria, which is a rapid legislative reform where the Data Protection Act was passed in 2023. The Nigerian Data Protection Commission that was created to coexist with the Ministry of Education to do probing on schools, and then they all agreed that institutions must submit for the 2024 compliance and audit returns, designate a data protection officer, and document technical safeguards within 21 days of notice. Then we have the country whose data protection is most aligned with the General Data Protection Regulation, which is EU's landmarks privacy law of 2018. This is the POPIA of South Africa. POPIA is Protection of Personal Information Act. The POPIA aligns closely with the GDPR, where data subject rights are enforced, data minimization, and accountability. Now, according to the POPIA, organizations must notify the information regulator and affected individuals as soon as reasonably possible after a breach. So if you discover, if schools or parents discover that they have a data breach, this organization needs to be informed as soon as reasonably possible for actions to be meted. Now let's look at a few cases of enforcement. In Kenya, we have the Nova Pioneer School in Kenya, who were ordered to pay about $7,400 for using a minor's image on billboards and its website without parental consent. At the end of this, the child's right to erasure was upheld, and this image was only discovered after the child had even left the school. There are two cases. One is also about 500,000 Kenyan shillings. The court case is still pending. Then we have the January 2026 Nairobi Academy that was also ordered to pay about $5,000 for unlawfully disclosing a student's exams results for commercial purposes. And the ODPC ruled that exam results constitute personal data requiring explicit consent. What we are learning from here is that exam results are also personal data. Then we have a case that is still ongoing with the Alphax Academy, Eldoret. This was a kind of subject to sue motto, self-initiated by the ODPC investigation for using children's images commercially without valid consent and failing to cooperate with regulatory inquiries. Now, what are the challenges schools are facing when it comes to data protection? The first thing is connectivity and infrastructural gaps. As we indicated earlier, only 40% of primary schools and 50% of lower secondary schools had internet access in 2024. This puts a grip on digital tools and data management in schools. The second is children's data vulnerability. According to the GDPR and the HIPAA, this data is required to respect data minimization, data autonomy, and impact assessments for data collected from children under 17. And assessments of 10 African countries found a lack of such specific youth protection. The fourth is low public awareness. Despite rising enforcements in Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, the public is still very much unaware of data privacy rights, and many regulators face acute resource constraints. The last challenge here is regulatory fragmentation. We have 16 EU member states that still do not have data protection laws. Even where the laws exist, the exemptions and lack of regulatory independence undermine enforcement, and as seen with the case of WorldCoin, the incident in Kenya. You can also check more on that. Now, so what can schools do? The first thing is that schools need to have a data controller or processor, somebody who is formally registered with the National Data Protection Authority. In Kenya, it is the ODPC, and then the NDPC in Nigeria. Then schools need to appoint a DPO to audit data management systems and ensure third-party apps compliance. And then schools need to conduct the data privacy impact assessments before rolling out any new EdTech platform, biometric tool, or data admission systems. Fourth, schools need to replace blanket in quotes, blanket consent with granular forms, remove ambiguous admission clauses, use explicit purpose-specific consent for photography, data sharing, or promotional use. And then the fifth, schools need to apply data minimization principles, collect data that is strictly necessary for academic and administrative purposes, and destroy the records once the students exit the school. Then the last thing in the list, schools need to establish breach response protocol, notify the regulator and affected individuals promptly. The case of South Africa requires notification as soon as reasonably possible. Now let's look at the regional initiatives and the policy roadmap. In 2020, between 2020 to 2024, there was the legislative surge where we had up to 36 of the 55 AU member states enacting data laws. And then we have the AU Digital Transformation Strategy called for harmonized data protection. From 2024 to today, there is the Building Foundation that is looking at the ODA and NEPAD EdTech 2030 strategy that looks at developing a continental policy framework that works across the borders on content sharing standards. And for the future, there are plans to look at the system integration and export and innovation, where Africa will be positioned as a global EdTech exporter, Pan-African EdTech innovation, and a research hub. So this is UNESCO and UDA NEPA, who are pioneering national AI competency frameworks and local language learning in Africa. This is directly to shape African school level data governance expectations. Now, let's just briefly compare these countries, the three countries we have looked at, Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. In Kenya, we have the Data Protection Act of 2019. In Nigeria, we have the Nigerian Data Protection Act of 2023. In South Africa, we have the POPIA that was initiated in 2013 and finally enacted in 2020. And then continentally, we have the Africa Union Malabo Convention. For the school mechanisms, the case of Kenya, the ODPC guidance notes mandatory data protection officer, digital privacy impact assessments required. And then for Nigeria, the NDPC works together with the Ministry of Education to audit the returns. And in South Africa, the general POPIA information regulator must have an oversight on every data collection or collected in school. For the continent, EdTech 2030 vision is on with ODA NEPAD. For enforcement, the case of Kenya, enforcement is quite active and fines are issued to schools. In Nigeria, probing continues and penalties are meted to schools that breach. And in South Africa, breach notifications go round and fines are also meted where penalties accompany, where schools go or break the law. Continentally, it's still aspirational because implementation is lagging in some countries. The key points to take from today is that legislative momentum is real. 36 of the 55 AU states have data laws, with 1/3 of those passed in the last 5 years. Enforcement is escalating. Now schools in Kenya and Nigeria are being fined and forced to face audit obligations. Children's data demands have heightened protection. Commercial use of student images or results now require explicit parental consent. There is also a challenge with connectivity, which remains the core infrastructural challenge that constrains both EdTech deployment and data governance. Continental alignment is coming with the ODA NEPAD EdTech 2030 and the UNESCO, who are driving for a harmonized framework. So I would share a list of my references. This was just a quick and light review of the situation in some African countries. So you can take a screenshot of this and read more on data protection in Africa. And I think we would be coming back to answer some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvin, for your wonderful presentation on the gaps related to data protection and how it relates to the education system. Dr. Tebo, are you able to unmute? Yes. I think we can continue from your side. We are left with Mr. Chibaya's presentation.
Thank you very much, Arvin, for that evidence-based perspective on digital privacy and school policy frameworks. Simplicio, the floor is yours.
I will go into my presentation. I work along the intersection of social media, of e-commerce, and also of digital rights. So my topic is protecting the digital rights and dignity of the African child. We all know that our continent has a history and We have come a long way as Africa, and one of the most important thing was to have our own independence in respective countries, have our own dignity, identity, and culture. And now we have a reality where we are now in a digital age. I can imagine when I started school about 26 years ago, there was no worry from my parents, from the government, or from my parents, or the school about my information going to the outside world, west to all five continents, online, and for people to view or like. Because I would just come from home, go to school, do my work, go to sports, go home. Apart from the teacher and my parents, no one outside of that transaction could get my data, my videos, my pictures, my personal information, or the type of school I went to. So it was limited to the community I lived in. So the main thing at risk here is our right to privacy. And most constitutions in Africa, they have this right. And in short, right to privacy means to be left alone, which means those who have nothing to do with your being, your dignity, or your identity should not get too much personal information about you. You will see that this results in widening the surface area of attack on children, especially in terms of child abuse, cyberbullying and cyber harassment, identity theft, and scams and fraud. Uh, Children's digital data is under siege, and most of them don't know it. Last year, 1.2 million people who are children photos were stolen and used for adult content. So people might just think, it's our cool teacher Jacqueline for class grade 3 blue. She is doing her lessons, she is doing so forth. And we have heard from the previous speaker that there are schools who have been fined for using pictures or content from children without their consent. So with the Cyber and Data Protection Acts in many countries, you will see that schools now carry a litigation risk. They now carry a fine risk that they might end up having to pay. Because the moment you bring someone photo, video, name, and anything that connects them to the real world, you expose them to a lot of risk that you cannot see. Next slide. So when we teach for views, that means the classroom becomes a content studio. I know this is good, trendy on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. I see it. So we now have a generation that grew up with technology. They transform classrooms into social media studios. Sometimes it is good. It spotlights schools for awards, for funding, or for impact. But I still feel like there are greater risk if it is not managed well. I won't go too much into the fines and other things. The previous speaker has spoken on that, but I will speak about the policy vacuum. The, the capture and dissemination of student identities without informed parental consent present a profound infringement on the digital rights of minors, bypassing parental safeguards against cyberbullying and image manipulation. As I have said before, this brings a digital risk. I have heard that there are hackers who, when they collect these images, they keep them in a data set that continues to estimate what the face of that child would be like at 18 years. So these kids are already exposed to fraud before they are 18 years or they open a bank account and they are working. And we know that these days people use biometrics. to as passwords. So imagine a kid photo is taken today, then the kid is 10 years. After 8 or 10 years, someone kept that image. They now have their biometrics that is more like identical to them, that they have synthetically made. This can lead to ransomware, can lead to cyberbullying, can lead even to loss of reputation. If someone like that who would now be in college is threatened by a video or an image that looks like them, or they're exposed to fraud. Next slide. So there's this issue of permanent record. When something comes online, it becomes a permanent record. There is no permanent delete in technology. So every photo that you upload today writes into a child life story permanently, and if it is without their consent, it already has started to expose them. So we look like at age 6, first classroom photo posted, child has no legal capacity to consent. Even if the parent consent, still the child did not consent. Then at age 14, image indexed by search engine. Then at 18, image scraped by 30 parties. It's now part of AI datasets. Then at age 25, adult 6 erasure. It's too late. Imagine this child has spent like 20 years without their consent or them knowing what was happening. But for most children, they just think that we are in class, we are learning, and our images are being taken. They don't think beyond just the experience of being in class and being posted online. To them, it's excitement. To the teacher, it's fame. To the parents, it's it's their kid identity and data which is out there. Next slide. So the threat multiplier here is one classroom video can cascade into multiple categories of irreversible harm. I've talked about trafficking and physical harm. Geotagged school images reveal a child's daily location and routine. This is a pattern of life that is being leaked to the public, to pedophiles, to traffickers, and so forth. There are risk of deepfake images and abuse. There's risk of identity theft. I've explained this to length. There's risk of cyberbullying and future attacks. So that video would be shared today, Friday, 26 June, and some videos, they take the location and a lot of metadata with them. And most kids live within around 5 kilometer or 10 kilometer radius from their school. So this already is narrowing down their data to be sold, the surface area for them to be attacked in terms of cyber and fraud. Next slide. So the legal framework, which has been also shared or unpacked by the previous speaker, we have rules like GDPR. With Article 8, child consent requires parental authorities for children under 16. In Zimbabwe, we have the Cyber and Data Protection Act, which has sections like Section 9 prohibits processing personal data of minors without guardian consent, and it disallows indecent photos of kids being shared. And also the POPIA in South Africa, which was explained, children's personal data requires prior authorization. So here we have to understand one thing here. If I am a parent and I bring my child or kid to school, the contract is for me to give you the rights to teach that children in classroom and to educate them. So when you now go a step further and start to use the content of my child to put online and for people from over 150 countries or 4 continents to see and to be able to take that image or video. You are now exposing to the risk that I didn't sign up when I got a place for my child at your school. So that means as a parent, I can wake up one day and sue you. So to keep relations cordial, let's understand that teachers are not that just teachers. When you are given children in your classroom, you are a co-parent. So would you do that with your children at home to post whatever they are doing at home and whatever it is? So the best way is to treat school like a second home and understand that there are privacy and cybersecurity risk for just sharing children photos. I remember a very large NGO, Save the Children. They once paid a heavy fine for putting faces of hyenas out there for promotional purposes. Despite that, their intention was to raise money and help these children. It led them to have a lawsuit. Next slide. So, beyond the classroom, what data protection really means for children is this: online and blended learning. Digital platforms collect biometrics data, learning analytics, and behavioral profiles. Most children cannot opt out of these learning management trackings. Search engines and indexing, school websites, Facebook groups, and they share children's data in real time. A parent complaint to Google can take 3 to 6 months to process. So it's also hard to then reverse the identity or the images of a child if there's an issue of cyberbullying. In some cases, this has resulted in suicides or physical harm to children. So we also have to understand that children also have lives that are linked to their digital existence, which might affect their emotional and psychological health. And there are also data brokers who might end up selling things that are not appropriate for the children in their inboxes and so forth. So the digital child exists everywhere, even if so the lessons will end at 4 p.m., but the identity created online is available 24/7 to whoever has access to that platform, which is for good and can also be for a huge risk. Next slide. So the right to be forgotten, how parents can legally demand the removal of their child's data from digital platforms. They need to identify the data, contact the data controller, which would be the school, invoke the Cyber and Data Protection or Data Protection Act or law in their country, escalate if they are refused. Next slide. So the practical guidelines and safeguards here. Schools needs to have a digital policy for digital privacy covering consent, data retention, publishing permissions, and to register as a data controller. Consent first culture, replace verbal consent with written informed consent forms for any child and a child likeness. Device and platform control, disable location tagging on school cameras, use platforms with student data protection certifications. Incident response plan. Every school should have a documented protocol for when a student image is posted without consent or there's a data breach, which was said earlier. Curriculum integration. Introduce digital rights literacy as part of life skills and civic education curriculum for children, especially grade 3 and up. Community monitoring networks. A school should have someone responsible for monitoring the safety of children online, offline, and see patterns of, and also check and ask children regularly to see if there are no children who are being cyberbullied or abused through these online visibility and presence personas. Next slide. So there's also need to build awareness among the educators that what they are exposing is not just the good lesson, but they're also exposing a lot about that child digital story, existence, life, privacy, physical harm, or good. Then parents and guardians also need to understand the privacy rights of their children, and the children and the young need to understand that they do not have to share a lot of their personal information online. Next slide. So, our call to action here, the African child deserves a digital future free from exploitation. Governments should enact and enforce child specific data protection regulations with real penalties. Schools should adopt a digital privacy policy and register as data controllers. Parents, know your rights under these data protection laws and exercise them. For educators, consent is not optional. Ask before you post, and also think about the risk of what you are exposing, so that when you post, you don't expose too much about these children, their identities, communities, tribes. Imagine there are communities with racism, with xenophobia, and stuff like that. So when you expose, maybe a child would be answering a question about religion, maybe it's about Islam, it's about Christianity, and so forth. Then they make a comment that might then be used against them as they go back in community. So think about that. That kids are not just faces or smiling faces. They are people who actually represent tribes, races, communities, religions, and they might also be linked to their parents who might have diverging views in the community. So let's have a privacy first culture in schools. Let's have social media policies, digital rights policies in schools. Let's train our educators on the appropriate ways to share their content. Not everything has to have the faces and identities of children. There are many ways we can magnify what we do as we teach our children without exposing them to danger, harm, abuse, and many other things. Let's realize that we are still operating in a world where most platforms and data of these children is not stored on our continent. And when there is a problem, it's very hard to then rectify it. Imagine for complete erasure, it would take like 6 months to 2 years to erase a child photos online or from Google or whoever, and that permanent record can stalk them their whole lives and affect their future prospects for employment, for to enjoy other things in communities like political rights and so forth. So let's understand the impact and evaluate, and not just be excited to have famous teachers online. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Simplicio. You have reminded us that protecting children online is both an ethical and legal responsibility. Time is almost against us because we were supposed to have a panel discussion for 10 minutes. But let me just put this question across. Um, you have all presented from different perspectives. So how can schools balance digital innovation in teaching with the protection of learners' rights, safety, and well-being? I am directing this question to the last presenter, Simplicio. Can you take the floor?
All right. So I think schools should not like as what we are seeing right now, just start with the goal of putting content or videos or pictures out there. They need to sit down, make a whole list of cyber risk that can affect children, engage the parents, engage police, engage child protection officers, and look at the laws. When they have a war framework now, that should guide them on what they should do. I've seen in most European videos, if you see the images of children in an advert or online, they blur the faces of all the minors. Despite consent, they can still make you see the classroom, the lesson, but they blur the faces or they show them from the back because they would not want that person to be identified in real life. Number two, policies should be clear both on sharing, deletion, and also on the topics that should be shared online. As I have said, they are culturally and politically sensitive communities. So not every topic or subject should be broadcasted. So maybe sometimes you might broadcast things like maths, things like physical science, but then avoid topics that might trigger certain things in communities because schools are very sensitive too. And we are dealing with not only the current, future, and identities of people, but also their future. So we would not want to ruin them before they start life. So schools need to be cognizant, have a risk management in place, and maybe allow for a period when videos or personal identified information can be kept online, not to be kept forever or to continuously audit the impact of these things.
Thank you very much, Simplicio, for that insightful response. Let's quickly hop into the chat and pick up some questions. The first question in the chat is from Christelle 4, and the question is directed to Benson. So Christelle is asking Benson that you have highlighted the importance of striking a balance, but how can this balance actually be achieved in practice, especially when teachers are sharing classroom moments online? Please be brief in your response. Thank you.
Okay, so you should have a content schedule, and your content schedule should be balanced. You don't just wake up every day and just video children or video your class moments and put it on social media. You should have a content schedule. This is what I want to talk about on Monday. Maybe this is what I want to talk about on Tuesday. This is what I want to do on Wednesday. And like other speakers have actually mentioned about the privacy of children when we're creating content, you should also look at that too. What are you putting out? Is it going to involve the children? Or is it going to affect the children again? So having a content schedule is one of those things that helps a lot because you're not as teachers or educators, you have all the times to do your things in the classroom, but you should schedule when to actually put out content and when not to put out content. And then it should be strategized, not just everything. You cannot just put out everything and anything on social media. You should streamline your content to things that are more educational. So content calendar, content schedule helps.
Thank you very much. The next question in the chat is directed to Arvin. And the question is, you have mentioned that digital privacy policies are emerging in Africa education systems and highlighted a few countries that are beginning to implement them. What concrete mechanisms are needed to ensure these frameworks are actually enforced in schools and not just existing on paper? Arvin, the floor is
All
yours.
all right, thank you very much. I probably didn't indicate very well that I came into this presentation as somebody who does systematic reviews. So given the time frame from when I was informed about this presentation and the workload on my table, I couldn't do an extensive review of what is published online about this topic. So uh, may I remind you that I am not a data protection or privacy expert, but I will tell you what is available in what is existing in literature. And then the other things I will share will not be coming from the point of literature review. They will be coming from my own personal experiences as a researcher. So you need to take them with a pinch of salt. So I would say that most of these things where teachers misbehave in schools, I'll call it misbehavior, could actually be coming from the teacher training colleges. This is where a lot of these things can be corrected. If they are corrected, if teachers are well trained and informed about these things, they will obviously bring them to their classrooms. If their trainers do not know about these things, they will not mention them, and they will just come with the excitement that follows smartphones or technologies, and then they will do these things without actually knowing that they are doing them. Now, when it comes to implementation of or enforcement of these frameworks, you see that it is from 2014 that we had the AU convention in Malabo. Every country, even the countries that are there, all of them have not started respecting this. And it is at the level of individual countries. We have a lot of countries that have very beautiful laws that are not implemented. So it's at the level of every other country to implement their laws, and then their citizens can now put them to task about this. But then I remember projecting the challenges that schools are facing, which are in a global picture, what the community is facing in doing this, which is law awareness.
Okay, thank you very much, Arvin. I know you have a lot to say, but time is not on our side. Let me just quickly go to the last question, which is to the last presenter. Thanks for the great presentation. Does online exposure translate into offline risks like kidnapping or kids being targeted by school boycott activists in conflict zones? And are these risks more prevalent in private or public school settings in Africa? Please be brief as you can, as much as you can. Thank you. That is to Simplicio, the last presenter, because this question came up when you were presenting.
All right. So, as I mentioned earlier, people already live in societies that have risk. So, by adding a layer of sharing their content in classrooms and online, it might expose more of their personal identity, personal life choices, languages, culture, and so forth. So, I have a reason to believe that in real life it can aid to other things that may be on the ground for someone to stalk or track that kid, and if it's a war zone or a community with violence, they may be targeted. It's not a matter of really private or public school. I think the risk can exist in both type of schools, but I have a reason to believe that private schools have more security, scrutiny, and policies. So it's more to the government and other types of schools that might need more safeguarding, child safeguarding policies, and risk assessment and management of sharing kids' identities and personal information online. I'm sure there are cases where children have been targeted because of content like this. Since content can be marketed to people in the same geographical area. So location identity and identifiable trends can can add to that risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A big thank you to all the panelists for an engaging and insightful discussion. And thank you everyone who joined this session. Today's webinar has highlighted three important messages. First, digital innovation offers tremendous opportunities for education, but it must never compromise children's rights and well-being. And secondly, schools need clear policies, informed consent, and responsible digital practices. And finally, protecting learners online is a shared responsibility that involves educators, parents, policymakers, technology providers, and learners themselves. So we hope that today's discussion has inspired practical action within our schools and institutions. So thank you very much for participating. Roslyn, I now hand back to you for the vote of thanks.
I thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Temple, for taking over during the session. Thank you, everyone, for attending this webinar session. I think we all have seen how social media can really affect children as well as the education system. And we should all be aware of the information that we share and how best can we take a tour further regarding the protection, because everything stays on the internet for a while. Um, with that all said, thank you to the presenters for the eloquent and insightful information that you have given to us as well as the participants. As we close off this session, please do like, follow, and share Real Life Research Institute social media programs, as well as our YouTube channel, where you find information regarding posts, blogs, and relevant information. So, thank you, everyone. I hope all of you have a delightful and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a great webinar.
You're welcome.
Before I go, my last word to everyone: if you are interested in us doing a review on this topic, then I'm sure you can talk to Rosalind, and then we can see how to do it. People who still want to dig more about this topic.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
interested actually. Yes, I will.
Thank you, Mr. Alvin. Thank you, Miss Benson, for
Thank
the
you.
invite of information. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending.